And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy.
I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
Get together, have a few laughs.
Welcome to the Iowa Talk Guys podcast. I'm your host, Theo.
I'm your host, Teepee.
And I'm Erock.
And today, we got a special for you guys. We are interviewing an author. Well, he's got a pretty interesting background here, but he's an author. And his name is Tim Moon. And I'm going to read a little bit about him here real quick. That's in his book. It says, Tim is a husband of one, a father of four, and a grandfather of two. He is also a longtime middle school and high school teacher who enjoys occasionally sharing his lifelong fascination with the mysterious cryptic monsters. His students get a kick out of the fact that their history teacher believes in some of these beasts. Tim and his wife live in Austin, Texas. He is a longtime educator and administrator with a passion for subjects related to history, philosophy, politics, theology, and cryptozoology.
That's a heck of a gaggle of subjects right there.
And he also loves basketball.
All right.
So, without further ado, Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
How's the weather in Texas?
It's cooling off. Well, for us, that's cool. But it's been up into the hundreds lately, and when it's over 100 in Austin, it's just killer. It's like being in the oven. Yeah. So, but now it's down in the 90s, so that's really comfortable. So,
wow, but, that wouldn't be very comfortable here in Iowa.
Yeah, that sounds like a Texas comfortable.
Yeah,
Al Gore.
It's a Texas comfortable. So, but yeah, it's nice though. It's a lot improved, and 10 degrees makes a big difference.
Cool. All right, good. Well, so you're an author. You wrote your first book, Tomato Fields,
which that was the first couple paragraphs of Mr. Moon's introduction to Tomato Fields.
Correct. And so you've been in that.
That's actually about the author.
Okay, about the author. Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Starts off with the first chapter.
Okay. And this book is a work of fiction, but based off of an actual event that happened to your brother, correct?
Yeah, it's actually inspired by an event that happened to my brother. I have toyed with the idea of using fiction to try to win people to this mystery and try to make it seem more believable to them by telling good stories and developing interesting characters. And I was with him one day about 10 years ago and asked him I think a Bigfoot show came on TV or something, and I asked him what if he'd ever seen anything strange, and he starts telling me about this experience he had with a Bigfoot that got pretty close to him. And I just couldn't believe it. I'm thinking, I've known you for all these years, and you never told me that. And I guess he didn't tell anybody because he was afraid people would laugh at him. But it was real close. It screamed at him. He smelled it. He ran to his house. He grabbed his gun, and he thought it was going to chase him and come down at him. And then it turned around and walked back in the woods. So
wow.
It was pretty scary.
Where was this at?
Was that when you lived up in Washington?
He lives in Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't live up there then. I lived up there then, but I was in the Seattle area. It was in Mason County, Washington, just up above the Hood Canal Hook.
Okay.
And it was in the rural area, so there was a lot of forests and everything.
Oh,
So,
there's some rural areas in Washington there.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just all you see is trees. You just mile after mile, all the way up to the mountains, and it's surrounded by green, the Cascades and the Olympic Mountains. So it's just a beautiful place. But there's plenty of room for cryptic creatures,
Right.
to get around. Yeah, so that's kind of how it happened. I can go in more detail on that if you want, but
Yeah,
Absolutely,
sure. Yeah.
please.
I would love to hear more.
well, he bought some property out in that area because he was going to subdivide it and build houses because he's a contractor, and so
Okay.
he worked in Seattle during the weeks. He worked in Seattle, and then he came over there on the weekends and worked to get the property ready to build on. And he went out one afternoon, and he was working on the lights on his truck. Something was wrong with his truck lights, and he smelled something very strange, really bad, like something dead or something rotting. And he thought, what the? And he started looking around, thinking maybe there's something had died or there was a skunk or something. And he looked up the hill to his left, and this thing was standing there. He said it was standing by a light pole, and the light pole has notches that connect it to bars that come down to the ground to stabilize the pole. And those notches, he's gone up and measured it since, and they're about 9.5 feet tall. So
Wow.
the his head came up to that place, and his shoulders were about 4.5 feet wide. And he just looked at him, and he just couldn't believe. He thought he was crazy. He'd never heard of seen anything like that. So
Gosh, either that or he was going to die.
Yeah, that'd be
he also thought he
terrifying.
was going to die.
Yeah.
Then it screamed. Then when they had eye contact, when they made eye contact, I think it was just coming down the hill for water, and it wasn't used to seeing him there, and he was only there on the weekend. So I think he surprised him. That's what we think.
What year was this?
But 1994, I think, somewhere in the early 1990s.
Okay.
And once they made eye contact, it started screaming at him. Have you ever heard him scream? The recorded.
I did. I listened to some recordings, Theo here, for the to prep for the show, and I can only imagine how horrible and terrifying it is in person, because that was intimidating to say the least.
Well, they kind of vibrate through you. He said it just went through him, and it scared him to death, and it just kept screaming. They go on forever.
May 2015, Northern Illinois. This footage was recorded by a man that was out mushroom hunting.
That's something that everybody says when they hear that scream. They say that it rattles, it reverberates through them. Sorry to interrupt you there, Tim, but
no problem. It does. You're right. And he ran for the house as soon as it started screaming, and when he got his gun, he only had a shotgun, so it wouldn't have helped much. Just a 20 gauge.
Some slugs might.
Yeah, well, he probably just had birdshot, I bet, if he's just being out in the woods to take down varmint stuff, right?
I don't know what he had. He just says it's a 20 gauge shotgun, so whatever. But he wasn't too confident, but he didn't know what else to do.
Right.
He thought it'd be coming down the hill after him. And he looked out the window, and it was just still standing up there screaming. But then it stopped screaming, turned around, and walked back into the woods.
Wow.
And so he just felt lucky that he lucked out that it didn't come down after him.
Yeah, thank God.
He probably could have heard him, but he wouldn't have killed him.
Well, and that would have been a scenario that you guys, nobody would know what happened, right? Him out in the woods by himself, goes out there every weekend.
It wasn't deep in the woods. It was just a rural area. He's about 40 yards from a road, a highway. And up the road is about, I would say, 40, 50 yards up. But it was just surrounded by greenbelt. So it was green everywhere. And so there was plenty of wilderness area, but they don't always. Sometimes they come around areas where they would have cars. They go in to find food, so they don't necessarily shy away from people completely, although they do mostly, I think. And he probably just didn't expect Joe to be there.
Yeah.
So,
So,
anyway.
do you think Bigfoot, then they're, like, I guess, a primate type creature? Are they physical? Are they paranormal? Metaphysical? Yeah. I mean, I guess.
Interdimensional?
What is your take? Because you've done a lot of research, obviously, for your book and whatnot. And real quick, also, so your brother didn't tell you that, obviously, until later after it happened. So this happened in the early 90s. When did he tell you?
In 2012, 2013.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
All right.
Going on
So
20 years.
almost. He kept that to himself. All right.
Yeah. I think he told his girlfriend, but he just mostly kept it to himself. So
Yeah, I don't blame him.
When I found out about it, I thought, geez, Tim, you got to just start trying to write this book, because I figured that should be your inspiration. So I started writing it, and I used his house. The house is in the book. His house is in the book. It's his address.
Oh, wow.
And I wrote the whole story around his house, and then made up most of it. Actually, made up all of it. But I made it up based on patterns that I had observed in reading reports and listening to stories for 30, 40 years.
Okay.
So I've done a lot of research,
Right.
and there's just too many tendencies that you see when you do the research that you can then use to use your imagination and come up with scenarios that might not be exactly what has ever happened to anybody, but they're reasonable that they could happen. And that's kind of how I did it.
And still leaving it up to the reader's imagination of, what
That's
could.
exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell them what to think. I don't want to tell someone who thinks they're paranormal that they're wrong.
Right.
I don't want to tell someone who thinks they're flesh and blood animals that they're wrong. I don't know.
Right.
But all I know is there's too much smoke for there not to be fire. But I don't know what the fire is. All completely. I could just have some ideas on it. If I had to bet on it, I would wonder if there's not some extraterrestrial origin of some kind. And just because they do things that a person should not be, or something born on this planet shouldn't be able to do.
Right.
They just
Such
have
as-
ability.
According to our understanding of the universe, of the world, I
Right.
guess.
They have strength that you just shouldn't have, and speed. Gorilla's super strong, but they can't run. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
a little bit on 4 feet.
I mean,
You
they
know,
get
these
scooting
things
pretty quick,
fly.
though.
These things do the 40-yard dash through the trees. I mean, they're tremendously fast. They can jump super high. They can climb really fast. They are just supremely talented animals, if they are just animals. And I just wonder if someone just said, some alien just said, you know what, we've had enough of these things on our planet. Let's go drop it off on Earth.
Let's drop them off on these
Nope.
other primates.
let Earth figure it out. Or maybe they used them as some kind of DNA research, and they made them. There's just so many theories now on ancient aliens, and
Or what if?
What if's a great channel.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
get what if even our governments have been splicing DNA for way longer than they've ever told us, and they created something and it got out. Who knows?
Who knows what's going on? I don't discount anything completely anymore unless I have some real good proof.
Yeah, and I'm definitely on your page where I'm not going to sit here and I don't know what they are, so I'm not. Who knows who's right or wrong? Sure.
All I know is that you run into something, or you even think you're close, you're going to be scared, and you're not going to be so sure you know everything then. And
absolutely.
And by the way, I know you guys are talking about Halloween specials. During Halloween, I'm going out with some guys that go out looking in Texas.
Oh, no kidding!
And it's pretty serious stuff.
Dude, that's
I
awesome.
have to get supplies and stuff, and I've never done that. So, but I want to know the area because I'm writing a sequel in the area that they're doing their research.
Okay.
So
that's awesome.
I'm going to be out learning what it's like to be afraid in the dark.
Well, you were saying a minute ago that, where there's too much smoke for there not to be a fire. And in watching videos and reading articles and whatnot to prep for the show, what I found was, with the exception of Antarctica, because that place is just a mystery, unto itself.
Yeah, that's a whole other.
That's yeah. Let's just not even go there.
Right.
It's like Polynesia is the only place that doesn't have lore. The Pacific, the islands in the Pacific that doesn't have lore of some sort of larger, incredibly strong, incredibly fast primate-looking being. You if you go to the Himalayas, you've got the Yeti.
Oh yeah.
The name I believe particularly in the Western United States, like of course the white
abominable snowman.
Yeah, well that's more Yeti, right?
Well, you're every language, every culture, every religion, every continent, almost every continent. Perhaps not Antarctica. It's kind of cold there. They're pretty smart. So every ethnic group sees these things and describes pretty much the same thing. How are you going to get all those different people from all those different backgrounds to tell you the same thing if it's not something to it? You can't get people to agree on stuff.
Oh,
it just doesn't work.
It was their fantastic imagination, right?
Oh yeah,
that's what they want us to believe.
Yeah, or they all decided that they were going to work together on this massive hoax because they don't have anything else to do.
Because they're bored.
Right? Yeah. They're bored. And they're all going to work together and tell the same story. It just doesn't happen. It's just not realistic. That's why I was attracted to the research part of it, because as a historian, you know from studying oral history, that if everybody's saying the same story, they're either up to something which they really organized well, or they're telling you the truth.
Right.
And why can't we believe that with regard to this, but we can easily with other types of oral reports that people have? And every native language has a noun for this animal.
Sasquatch was what the white Apaches in Northern California, that's where that came from. Yeah. Yeti is the Himalayan version.
Well, and then
all of them do. The natives in my book called it stickman. But they have a word for it, but they won't say their word because it's bad magic to use their word.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, yes.
So the white men made up the term stickman. They were out in the woods, the pioneers, so they just borrowed the white man term.
Okay, nice.
So they don't have to say their term, which is bad medicine. So, there's all kinds of different theories about them from the Indian, the natives. Some of them see them as devils. Some of them see them as friendly forest animals. Some of them see them as tribes. So there's just all kinds of ideas about what they might be in the native community. But regardless, they don't make up names of things that don't exist.
Right. Yeah. There's usually a reason behind all the stories, and that's another reason why I truly believe that the ancient world does not get nearly as much credit as they deserve.
No. They weren't distracted by all of the things that we were.
Yeah, they weren't being poisoned mentally and physically, but like we were. Yes. I mean, especially most of these Native American tribes, they would send to become a man, you had to go through that fasting rite and stuff and go off. And I mean, these people were pretty connected to nature, in tune with...
very connected.
Spiritually and physically, I think, connected to the earth in ways that we would never be able to feel in the day and age that we live in,
That's definitely true, and I think that we used to have powers like telepathic powers and sensing that we don't sense anymore because we got used to using tools.
Yeah,
and so I just think we've forgotten a lot of what we used to know.
Listeners, please excuse the swallow in the background.
Yeah, we got a barn swallow.
Yeah, we're in a shack in the middle of a cornfield.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so if you can hear the barn swallow behind us, we apologize.
Yeah. Excuse that, Tim, please.
Not Bigfoot.
Man, the last interview we did, we had a cricket that made its way in here too, and just the whole audio, I couldn't get it out in the background, just squeaking the whole time. Anyway,
funny.
But yeah, I believe that too, and we've definitely, I think it's by design that we've been, I guess, spiritually disconnected from the earth in the day and age that we live in, because they're setting us up for a great deception, in my personal opinion.
Setting us up. they're in the deception. So, but anyway.
No, yeah. You're right. We are in the deception. But, so, yeah, Bigfoot, I actually have an experience, and the only person that I've shared it with has been Theo. So when I was in the Marine Corps, I was stationed out in North Carolina, and I was a sapper instructor. So we trained a lot of Marines for pre-deployment training and stuff. And one of those training events that we would do was that we would have Marines come out and they would do patrolling, and we had like a 5 square mile training area. There's woods, there's paths and stuff all through this, and roads, fire breaks. And we would send the Marines down these areas, certain areas, and we would some of the other instructors would play opposition 4, so we would set up ambushes for them, set up IEDs and stuff, and try to make it as realistic as we could do the actual thing. And one day I was playing Op 4, and so I was running around, and I was going to try to draw these Marines in that were training into this one area that another instructor and I had put some IEDs in. And the other instructor, he was further down the road. I couldn't see him. I couldn't even hear him, and I'm sitting there, I'm waiting, and I can see these other Marines coming up. And when we were next to a road, I was in the woods. We were next to a road that was next to the base dump. So as far as like the smells go, it just smelled like garbage anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it took me a while. I didn't believe that what I'd seen for many years. So I totally get where your brother was coming from, because I never had anything like that, what he did, but I'll explain. So I'm sitting there. These Marines are coming up this road. I'm watching them. And then all of a sudden I hear all this crashing and a hell of a noise behind me. And I turn around and look. And all I can see is, at the time, I told myself like it was just a turkey vulture flying through the woods for some reason at like 12 feet in the air. Because it looked like almost like a wingspan of this turkey vulture, because they're all flying around the dump there next to it, right?
Yeah, they're not small either.
No, they're big, right? So, I mean, and this wingspan, this was a good maybe 8-9 feet. And then I thought
it had its arms out?
Well, it didn't have its arms out. I thought it was the wingspan, but looking back at it, I think it was just the back shoulder, like the back shoulder part, and then the upper neck. And I remember seeing hair. Like the sun would hit it right at the same, like a perfect spot as it was going through. It was going away from me. And it was making a bunch of noise. Snapping limbs and stuff. I had a rifle with blanks loaded in it, and I'm like, I spun around because I'm paying attention to what's going on in front of me. There shouldn't be anything else around me, right? This starts happening behind me. I spin around, I see that, and I'm like, what the hell was that? And it just freaked me out. So I just ran out into the road and shot a few rounds off towards the Marines, some blanks, and then ran the other way. And then, I got killed by them and stuff or whatever. But and the other instructors, they asked me when I got back, they're like, why'd you do that? I'm like, oh, man, I had to take a dump, so I just wanted to hurry up and get it over with. Like, I just made up some excuse, but it took me a long time until I started researching. I started listening to podcasts and researching more Bigfoot stuff. That's when I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what that was. Like, I don't know what else it would have been.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Send it, yeah, please.
How long had you been sitting there when it started crashing?
Oh, I was probably sitting there because I was waiting to ambush these guys. I knew where they were coming from, so I'd probably been laying there in that spot underneath some brush. I was like underneath a bush laying down in the prone, and I'd probably been there for a good 15 minutes at that point.
Did you hear anything like walking up the hill before that?
No, I didn't hear a thing. And like I said, looking back at it, like I was trying to focus and listen to what the instructors were telling the other Marines, because they were coming up to another ID that we had placed.
Did you have a radio?
No, I did not have a radio.
Did you have a radio?
Nope. All I had on me was a rifle with blanks loaded in it.
Because it sounds to me like you surprised him.
That maybe he was kind of sneaking through there.
He may have been going through there, and he smelled you. He may have seen you. He may have smelled you. He didn't know your gun had blank.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so he probably... Because I was laying in the prone. When I like I said, I was laying in the prone underneath this bush. I mean, yeah, he could have come up behind me, seen my legs, and it very well, he could have been hearing people talking, so he might have been sneaking through, and then surprised me, and then he took off running in the opposite direction, which scared the crap out of me.
Did you just assume the gender?
I did. I sure did.
Now, is there a difference?
If they're that big, you probably are male.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, looking back at it, I'm pretty sure what I saw was the back shoulders, which were like 8 to 9 feet. I mean, and there was up 10, 12 feet in the air. And like I said, there was branches snapping off and stuff. So that's why I was just like, how heavy are these freaking turkey vultures are snapping limbs off and shit? You know, I'm like...
Snapping limbs, but did you also hear the steps crashing going down?
Yeah, it sounded like that, but I was like, that had to have been... You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to make this logical in my head to where I'm like, that had to have been a turkey vulture, what I saw.
You probably turned quickly into flight mode, too, right?
Yeah, I got the hell out of there, like I said. Because I was like...
So, yeah, perception,
I have a rifle, but I can't do what I'm going to shoot at, scare it.
Yeah, that was a Marine that was useless with his rifle.
Yeah, exactly. I would have had to use it as a blunt object and would have gotten torn apart.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, like I said, for many years, though, I never talked to anybody about that. I always thought about it. And then I started doing some more research, and I'm pretty sure what I had encountered some type of Bigfoot, something.
It sounds like it to me. They don't have grizzly bear down there, right?
No, nope, not on the coast of North Carolina.
That's just Northwest United States.
Yeah, they might have some black bear around that area, but they don't really. I mean, they do a pretty good job of keeping that crap off the base. You know what I mean?
Plus, they're not 12 feet high.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, they're not 12 feet high, and it was moving fast. That's why I was like, it had to have been a turkey vulture just flying through the woods or whatever from coming off that dump, because it was moving, it was trucking, and like I said, it scared the crap out of me to where I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. Damn the training. I'm gone.
There's a lot of some of the more interesting reports I think are from military guys.
Yeah,
and I think there's a lot of pressure in the military not to say anything, so I just wonder how many reports, how often they interact, and then you never hear about it.
So there's another podcast called Hollow Sky Podcast. I don't know if you've heard of those guys, but they do a Wednesday night live show on YouTube, and they had a guy call in that was a helicopter pilot, and his co-pilot, they spotted something. They were training up in, I believe he said it was in the northwest, around the Washington, Oregon area, and they spotted this thing with a heat signature goggles.
IR or whatever. Yeah.
And then he told his co-pilot, because his co-pilot started kind of freaking out, like, what did this and that we got? And he's like, nope. He goes, I've been a pilot for 20-something years. He's like, I know. He's like, that was the first time I ever saw that, but I've heard stories. And he goes, hey, if you want to keep your rank and keep the job that you're doing, you're best just to shut up.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that was what happened for decades with pilots that saw UFOs. And
oh, yeah, that's true. Right? Yeah.
Now it's just out in the open.
Allegedly,
now we need it to distract people from what's actually going on in the world.
We store their corpses in cardboard boxes in Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah, there's sure some strange stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what to think.
And who knows how much of it is our government, foreign governments, or out of this world, extraterrestrial. I mean, because
I say if the extraterrestrials exist and we found their ships and we've reverse engineered them, okay, and we have bodies, they need to do more than just talk about it. I want to see it. What do they want me to believe? They better start showing me that stuff.
What did you think of the Mexican alien?
The mummies?
The paper mache.
I don't know. I don't know if it was or not.
Right.
I think Mexico, as a government, has been much more open to this and much more open to with their people about it, and less likely to hide it.
Yeah, they're really trying to keep them distracted from all the blood and guts in the street from the cartels down there. So they're pumping out a bunch of stuff to keep the citizens distracted.
The drug cartels are just terrorists, and they should be treated like that.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Well, the DEA and the ATF have helped them out a lot over the years.
Yeah, thanks, Eric Holder.
Well, a lot of our government is terrorists.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we talk about that on our show.
True dat.
Amen. But anyways, yeah. So
take part in child trafficking. That's terrorism.
Yes,
absolutely. Yes. On a horrendous scale.
Unequivocally.
Yeah. So you actually, prior to the recording, you shared a website with us that has a map of Iowa. I'm going to put that in the description of this show because it's really cool, of all these sightings and stuff.
It's kind of a cool story. Yeah. It's just a cool map where there's some activity in Iowa.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting. I went to one of the sites today.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, well, that's the picture that I showed you, Teepee.
Oh, okay.
And that was a sighting in 1981. But right now it's in the middle of town. But
okay,
that would
used to be rural.
It would have, absolutely. And just really interesting. It's right across the street from a kid that Erock and I hung out with in high school.
Oh, that's weird.
So that building might have been there at the point, but the other one was on the old highway we were talking about there earlier, and even in Iowa, that's very heavily wooded, and I can only imagine, and that was 1989.
Yeah,
even today, it would still be the perfect place for something to hide out, a perceptive creature that can stay away from people, and even in Iowa, you know, we're only a state of 3 million people. We don't have a population density like other places, but there's plenty.
Oh, there's so much
room.
land. Yeah, especially along the riverbanks and stuff. And that's where there was that one sighting where an experienced outdoorsman that grew up in Maine, I guess, or whatever, had an encounter with his girlfriend.
Yeah, that was the 89, and that's actually only 10 miles away with the way the crow flies from where we're at.
Yeah. And that Wapsie Valley, I mean, that's so thick and it's swampland and stuff. It'd be so easy for anything to hide in there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right close to here, there's actually a split in the river, and there's a massive island that is just trees.
Yep.
It's just trees.
Well, remember there was that cougar or something, mountain lion that came down that was hiding up there.
Yeah, they say we don't have... The DNR says we don't have mountain lions, but those things are... It's a big cat, dude. Its nature is to not be seen.
Right.
And people have seen them.
Yeah, all over the place out here. But yeah, they can hide all up in...
It's happening here too.
Yeah.
Well, but the DNR officially tells us, you know, that we don't have mountain lions here.
Yeah, we should trust them.
They're swamp river lions.
Yeah.
I think some of the state national, or not national, but some of the forest agencies in the states are starting to open up more about this, and they're actually telling people there's Bigfoot. You're coming down to the river. Just be careful. Leave them alone. They won't bother you.
Wow.
I don't know. I've seen some really interesting articles and posts on that, and I can't always verify that this was actually said and done, but a couple times when I could, they said it was true. So I think maybe the local people are starting to open up about it.
Okay, that's good.
But the national ones don't.
I mean, I've
seen some cool stories.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
I've seen some cool...
You're the guest. Sorry, you go ahead. You're the guest.
Well, I was just telling you, in Iowa, I've seen some kind of interesting encounters in the cornfields.
Yeah.
Where they run into them with the they don't run into them, but they come up on them in a tractor, and then they run through the cornfields. I can't remember the exact details because it's been a while since I heard the story, but a couple of really interesting stories of them in cornfields.
Yeah, that happens.
I don't know how close.
Yeah, we're surrounded by cornfields out here, and there's actually stories of that happening over in Illinois quite a bit too. There's a podcast out of there called Cryptids of the Corn, and they talk.
Yeah.
The Thunderbird, I believe, is the really, really popular lore over on that side, particularly.
Over in Illinois.
Yeah,
really?
You know Tim, are you familiar with that? The Thunderbird.
I've heard about it, but I don't know very much.
I thought that was more southwest.
No, I did a dive. It was before we were even doing the podcast on not too deep of a dive, but one of the cryptids that I found very interesting was people talking, and it's been for hundreds of years that people have been talking about this. But yeah, a hawk or some sort of a raptor,
giant bird
with like a 12-foot wingspan, and that's creepy because that could pick you right up, and you're
could pick up a grown man. I could believe it, dude.
Isn't it weird? Isn't that just strange that people would see that?
Yeah.
Right.
It's wild.
Crazy.
So,
and why would they make it up?
Right. Yeah. What is their incentive? Because nobody's ever gotten famous for making up a cryptid before that I know of. Besides that guy.
And no one believes them anyway.
Yeah. Besides that guy that took that picture of the Loch Ness, and then on his deathbed he admitted that it was a fake.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
No, don't you remember in what was it? 2000. I just had the article. 2008. When that guy had the Bigfoot on ice.
No.
I was looking forward to it because he was going to unleash it, you know,
and it
turned out to be fake.
That's weird.
It was in Georgia.
Did he have
had
people
it in
paying
a-
money?
He had it in a freezer.
Okay. Turns
Was
out
that the Minnesota Iceman? There was one that was called the Minnesota Iceman. I remember that. I don't remember what
in the
happened.
early 2000s, it seems like there was a bunch of like soft disclosure, but BS soft disclosure.
Well, there always is.
Like for instance, you remember there was that big show, and they found the tomb of Jesus.
Oh yeah,
and I watched some guys tear that apart. They're like, yeah, they found a tomb and it had all of these names on the I can't remember what the boxes were called, the limestone boxes they carved out, and they would put the bones in.
Okay.
And that was actually how they stored the bodies in the tombs and whatnot. And I saw other guys, they were like, yeah, the names they found Yeshua, right, was Jesus in Hebrew, and then they found Mary and Joseph and whatnot. And they're like, yeah, 75% of the people back then had like 13 names. There were 13 names that 75% of the people were. So I mean, that was a little long-winded, but just BS, you know. And it's go ahead.
They weren't buried together, so why would they be
Right.
in a tomb?
Well, I'll tell you what, they made a show about it and they told everybody. It didn't stop them.
Somebody was making money off of it.
I doubt nothing.
Right.
I believe that. It's funny, you see, every year National Geographic has to do one episode on Jesus. They don't always tell the truth, but they get use of the name.
Sure.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah.
To get ratings.
And they get a bunch of clicks and views too.
Yep, it sells.
Yep.
So from that link that you sent Teepee, that has the map and whatnot, I found an interesting. This isn't exactly Bigfoot, but I found an interesting newspaper clipping. It's pictured here on the website from the Hartford Courant. The Hartford Daily Current, and that's Hartford, Connecticut. So that's really interesting because this was the 27th of September, 1869. Now, this is placed in Davenport, Iowa, which we're somewhat close to. And Davenport was founded in the 1830s, but it was still wild around here, you know. And here's the paragraph from this newspaper clipping. Considerable excitement exists in East Davenport, which was like the original Davenport, and Gilberttown, in consequence of a wild boy who has been seen by several voracious individuals prowling about the woods at the back of Judge Grant's farm. If this doesn't sound like it's from 1869, I don't know what does. And on the rivers,
Everybody knows Judge Grant's farm.
yeah, of course. Yeah, no. And of course, what is it? Sorry. And on the rivers, bank, and islands. So by Judge Grant's farm and on the rivers, bank, and islands. We're right on the Mississippi River, pretty much. About a week ago, a man returning from a shooting excursion saw what he first took for some wild animal crouching by the bank of the river. It suddenly plunged in and emerged with a fish, which it devoured ravenously. Getting closer to it, he saw that it was a boy, apparently about 15 or 16, entirely without clothes and covered with light sandy hair or silky appearance. He plainly saw the face and describes it as revoltingly ugly and brutal in its aspect. He attempted to approach it, but the creature became alarmed and, taking to the water, swam to a neighboring island and hid in the sedges, which that's like aquatic, semi-aquatic grass plants. On returning home, he gave information and a close lookout has been kept. The creature, whatever it may be, has been seen twice. What I find really interesting about that is, for people who are not from the area or familiar with the upper Mississippi River, when you get upriver to St. Louis nowadays, we have a system of locks and dams. And what this does is the Mississippi River all the way, this is a very unique to the Mississippi River, is that from Minnesota to Louisiana, it only goes down like 500 feet in elevation. So in order to get grain, to move grain down there, we have locks and dams, and you have to lock through and go up or down the water level. Well, this wasn't even close to complete, or they hadn't even begun to start this. This is decades and decades away.
Yeah, in the late 1800s.
So the river was like you weren't going in that thing, man.
It was running.
I can imagine how powerful it was back then, dude. Because they don't call it the mighty Mississippi for no reason.
No. And they said this area in particular was massive rapids.
I bet, because we're right here on that bend.
Yeah,
it's got those two major bends right around this area, and the mighty Mississippi. She still claims people today.
Oh, absolutely. Tim, have you heard that story?
No, I just heard one recently where they said they described a wild man who ran around naked. Some of the stories in Texas are like that, a wild man who runs around naked with hair on him. And they think it's some guy who got lost in the woods. So I tend to doubt that it was a human. And I tend to doubt that boy was a human. It could have been a young Sasquatch, but it was probably something like that. That's my thinking. And he just saw it, and that's the first thing he could come up with in his brain when he was trying to reconcile what he was looking at.
Sure, yeah, the ugly face,
wild boy,
and he's ugly.
Yeah,
he must not. Was he big? They never mentioned how tall it was.
Well,
he said it was at the age of like a
15 to 16-year-old boy.
So I imagine he wasn't too big. Probably like 5, maybe 5'5".
I don't know how he determined what the age was.
Yeah, that's a good question.
What was he looking at that he could determine? So there's a lot of unanswered questions there.
Right,
that was
1830, 1869.
Journalism. So interesting story. And I think if it was just a lost boy in the woods, they wanted to find him, they could probably find him.
Sure.
Yeah.
Don't know for sure, but
even though the river wasn't controlled at that point, I mean, what made
jumping and then swimming over to one of those islands?
Well, how did Mark Twain get his start? Piloting riverboats up and down. This was a massive continental highway.
Yeah. So
there were people. I mean, it was wilderness, yes, but if they wanted to find a boy, they could have done it.
Yeah, on an island, he swam. It's just interesting. I would have thought he would have run for the woods, but that they swim for an island is. You got to be a pretty good swimmer to do that.
Yeah. That's something none of us would even attempt today. And the river is way more controlled than it was back then.
Yeah, we're not like those boys from Alabama where we swam across the river just to prove that we're a man.
You would have to swim against the current, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, to go straight. Oh yeah.
Oh, you'd end up.
I don't know how you.
Depending on the distance from the side to the island. I mean, you're going to end up down river hundreds of yards.
Did we have a date on that too? Because it depends on what time of the year it is too.
September of 1869. So about now, and I would imagine there was a lot more water rushing down back then.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I mean, if it was in the earlier beginning of the year, there'd probably be even more water or the beginning of spring with all ice and stuff melting and storms up north.
It's really interesting all the questions you have when you hear stories like that.
That's what we're doing,
right? Yeah.
Yep.
You wish you'd be able to talk to somebody, but
why didn't anyone else have? Weren't you doing anything? Wasn't there any reason to ask these questions? And no.
Well, I think also back in the late 1800s would have been a wild time to be a young man or a young adult in America, because I mean they were finding that was when they were digging up. Dinosaur bones everywhere. They were digging up giant skeletal mounds. I mean, heck, everybody, if you had a shovel, you were pretty much an archaeologist. They were finding stuff everywhere. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention all the cryptozoology stuff going on. So like you mentioned the Thunderbird, there's all these Sasquatch type animals, also fairies, right? I mean, the natives have stories about talking animals and shit.
Sure, yeah. The Navajo skinwalkers.
Do you know that Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone had experiences with Bigfoot?
I did not know.
Yeah. Davy Crockett left Kentucky. Was it Tennessee? Is it Tennessee or Kentucky?
I think he was Tennessee.
He was Tennessee. He was a congressman, and he wanted to run for president. And then he lost his seat in Congress. And he got mad because he lost his seat in Congress, so he left the state. And he went to Texas. Yep. He went to Texas, and when he was going through what today is called the Davy Crockett National Forest, he said that he was camping and he saw a big hairy man that came out of the woods and talked to him. And it told him, don't go to Texas. Don't go to the Alamo. Bad things are going to happen.
It talked to him? Wow.
It talked to him telepathically. And he wrote this story down and sent it to his brother. So we have the actual story. If you look it up, it's online.
Wow.
And he didn't listen. And he went to the Alamo, and that's where he died.
Yeah. Wow, that's wild.
And then Daniel Boone killed one. He saw it come out of the woods, and he killed it.
Wow. Holy smokes.
He wrote about killing it, but he didn't cut it up and bring it back for evidence. But he said he saw this big animal, and he shot it and killed it.
Wow.
And so those are pretty cool stories. And Franklin Roosevelt, before he was president, met some people in the West Coast, in the western areas. I don't know if it's Utah or Montana.
When he was a Buffalo soldier?
Yeah, in that time period.
Okay.
And he wrote down their story of a trapper who was killed by one.
Wow.
Just to clarify, I'm sorry, Tim. I think you said Franklin Roosevelt.
No, you were right. It's Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay.
Theodore Roosevelt.
Well, I knew who you were talking about, though.
Yeah. I picked it up, and
you are correct.
Franklin Roosevelt couldn't walk, so
yeah.
That would be a feat.
So anyway, go ahead. I apologize.
So the whole idea was that he was so fascinated and struck by the story, he felt he had to write it down. And he's the first modern president that has written about it, the only one that I know of.
That is incredible.
Anyway, there's a lot of history on this.
Yeah, and it's just so amazing how that's the last thing we hear about. Like, we're learning about this for the first time. You're telling us about these mainstays of American history, and they weren't given that to us in 5th grade, you know?
No, they don't give very much to anybody anymore.
Listeners, this is coming from an educator.
You can teach them the ABCs, but there's limits to what you want to teach to a 5th grader anyway.
Sure.
The problem is what they're not teaching in high school and colleges.
Critical thinking.
And critical thinking, but also, look, we're living on a planet that's been around a long time, and there's a lot of structures that don't make sense.
You bet.
And there's probably been civilizations that have been here before us.
Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, that was just her learning about that. And then they found structures way down underneath Cuba and other places. They find structures off the coast of Japan that are thousands of years old. They have to be man-made because of how they're lined, and
the Bimini roads.
There's just stuff that's been going on this planet for a long time. To think that we're the only civilization that's ever lived here is a little bit naive.
More than a little bit, yeah.
I was going to say ignorant, but you're a lot classier than I am.
So we're not special.
Almost now, today, it's intentional ignorance. It's no longer naive ignorance. It's intentional ignorance. And it needs to stop. People need to start acting like adults.
Yeah, amen.
And the government needs to start treating people like adults.
Amen.
And we don't need you to protect us and hide everything from us. If you're even, or we really need you to quit being liars too.
Well,
tell the truth and start serving people as representatives instead of having them serve you.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unless they've got something massive and major to hide. And that seems so likely.
If you mean because they've done something wrong.
Well, that
is possible.
That, and you were talking about the reverse engineering of craft and whatnot. I'm trying to think of the name of that documentary, Unacknowledged. It was on Netflix for a while. I think it's Dr. Stephen Greer is his name, and so they found the craft and bodies and whatnot in Roswell. So if they reverse engineered it, how much did they learn? And we're not benefiting from any of the technology that we would think would come from that.
Well, why are they hiding it?
That's a great question. It's a great question.
And why aren't we? If these aliens have come here before, they're still coming.
You bet.
Why aren't we seeing?
Is it the chaos?
Why don't you just bring one to the hearing?
Well, a bunch of people wouldn't believe it now.
Well, talk to the alien. Let you see if you don't believe that.
Well,
why do we have? Anyway,
I'm sorry not to cut you off, but I think that they are slowly going to have disclosure come out.
Soft disclosure.
But I don't know if I'm going to trust it just because I don't trust my government at all. You guys have lied to us so much to this point. For all we know, that's going to be a freaking false flag. You're just going to take away more of my rights. But and when you look back to when, what was that, War of the Worlds? Who did that radio show?
Orson Welles,
and how people were like freaking out, panicking, blowing up water towers everywhere and stuff like that. I think they decided, well, we got to slowly introduce this to society. And that's what, if you look at films and television and even music and stuff and art, since then, look at, we went from the War of the Worlds to Independence Day with Will Smith, where people are standing on top of the building like, take me away. You know what I mean? And I think they want to get to that point where people are going to be very accepting of these things once it finally
perhaps
happens.
Submissive. Yeah.
Well, I think the whole mystery of Bigfoot is wrapped up in the bigger mystery of the universe.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What our place is in it, really, not what our Earth-centric mindset has told us.
Sure.
And I think when we understand what's really out there, we'll understand the Bigfoot. We'll just go, oh yeah, that makes sense. It'll just fall together.
Yeah, but instead, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just think that's the solution, that we have to come to grips with who we really are in this universe, but that requires honesty.
Well, is that what they fear, is the chaos that would ensue with religion?
I don't think that would happen. I think that's in their imagination. We're not worried about it. You don't see them freaking out when they hardly even got a press. When they said the guy came forward and he was coming forward, and what do they call those people that come forward and report on the government?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's a whistleblower. And there was some press, but no one panicked. No one was tearing water towers down.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think people care anymore. I think that you can tell us the truth and everyone will just relax. Or maybe there really is something to panic about.
And I think also at this time, the day and age that we live in, they're like, cool, aliens exist. Can I have $1.50 gas again, please? How about, you know what I mean? I think but that could also be another way where they're keeping us distracted.
Or have we de-evolved to where everybody's stupid and simple?
Well, my fear is that I've heard stories where they've made deals with some of the aliens that they can go ahead and take people as long as they keep it limited, and then they'll share technology with us, and they don't want to tell anybody that.
And the national park?
That's what I fear might be the case. That could cause the panic.
Yeah, that's such a heinous act. I mean, to allow, it doesn't matter if it's, for a foreign entity or foreign extraterrestrial entity, that would be horrific. But even just another government entity. Oh yeah, we'll let you kidnap people and do whatever you want with them as long as you give us stuff in return. Like, that's just terrible.
And yeah, that Operation High Jump.
Oh, with
the Nazis and the
Admiral Byrd
and the aliens down in Antarctica.
Yeah, there's
doing the treaty.
There's a whole bunch of stuff with that. That's a whole other can of worms.
That's just a concern that I have, and that's why they're hiding it.
No, and that's a great concern. Yeah.
But otherwise, I can't figure it out.
Well,
I just don't understand what the benefit would be.
Well, and then the technologies that would come with the sort of energy used to move a craft from one side of the universe to the other. How are they going to... When propane costs go up to $4 a gallon in the winter, how are they going to get $1,500 out of me to fill my tank?
Right.
Well, that's the other thing, is I think that free energy would fix a lot of things on this planet, but it would prevent a lot of other people from getting rich.
You bet. Rockefeller Empire wouldn't have been built.
Yep. And I think that's another technology that's been suppressed from us that I think the ancients freely knew about.
I think there's some reason to believe that. So I just, something's not right.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Well, yeah. Now we have guys like the journalist and author Graham Hancock that are going around, doing Joe Rogan shows, and he's got the Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix and whatnot. And
there's a lot of guys doing that now.
Sure, and he's got
stuff.
Great stuff. It's a great series. We're not affiliated, obviously, but the Bimini roads, the massive rocks that are lined up perfectly with gaps underneath them. Even they're sitting on some sort of substrate. And then, but when you in Göbekli Tepe, he talks about you brought up tunnels earlier. They found a site in Turkey where they think that there could have been like 3,000 people living underground in these caves.
A whole city underground,
but
complete with vents and everything.
Instead of healthy and constructive dialogue and pulling up a chair, they kind of pull out the proverbial club instead.
They found structures in India that just are not from what we know of in terms of the human experience we've had the last 6,000 years. They're older than that.
Yeah. Yep.
And just you can't deny it anymore. There's just so much evidence.
Yeah, and then we still have no idea how these things were even built, how these people did this stuff.
Yeah, that massive piece of sandstone or whatever in Egypt, it's like 20,000 tons.
Yeah,
and they're like, we have absolutely no idea, based on the technology that we have believed that they had. We have no idea how they did this.
Well, even
do you know?
Go ahead.
Do you know there's no mummies in the pyramids?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, isn't it?
There's mummies in the tombs that they probably did build, but there's no mummies in the pyramids.
Yeah.
Weird. But that was the big story for all these years, and these kings got the slaves to build these big monuments so they could put their bodies in there. Well, there's no mummies in it.
Yeah.
In there.
Or even like sarcophagus structure.
Well,
right.
And that they're like, we don't even know in the king's chamber, they call it, right? It's supposed to be the king's coffin in the biggest pyramid.
Khufu, the pyramid of
Khufu. The Great Pyramid, yeah. And they're like, we don't even know how the hell they got this thing in here, let alone move this slab.
Yeah.
They have no idea. And yet we're supposed to look down on them. Our society looks down on these ancients like they're a bunch of buffoons. Oh, that's just that was their make believe. These creatures that they saw, all this stuff is just their imagination because they were smoking peyote.
Right.
Well, anyway, it's just getting harder and harder for them to hide that.
I agree.
What's this hieroglyphic of an attack helicopter doing here?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that we're. Who knows? Maybe our children, grandchildren will find out in the future, and we might be long gone. But yeah, there's plenty of unanswered questions about the ancient world that we'll probably never know, or even our world today. I guarantee you, these Bigfoots exist. They're out there. There's some government agency that has files on all this stuff.
You bet.
If not clones of their own, or captured some. You know what I mean?
How to. I think they hunt.
Why not?
When one goes rogue, I think they send the special forces out to get them.
Yeah, what if this is some type of xeno warfare at this point, where we drop them off in other countries and they go create chaos and death as a weapon? You know what I mean? Who knows? Who knows at this point? If they're biologically engineered to be weapons instead of like the ones that everybody reports seeing out in the woods, these things could be some killing machines. So, that'd be a good story to write there, Tim.
I find it interesting too, because it seems like these days, like not from a technology perspective, but like an idea perspective, like it's almost as if Orwell wrote 1984, right? And that was just an idea for some of these psychopaths that want power. Like, oh, this is an excellent blueprint. Well, let's go do this. Jules Verne is writing all this stuff, right? I think these crazy psychopaths, sociopaths at best, they just got ideas, you know?
Well, science fiction is often used to, I think, move society forward.
Absolutely.
In ways, and it certainly has been in our society. So maybe that's a good. I think the 1984 was inspired by what happened in the Russian Revolution, and I think the Nazi I can't remember if it was before or after that. But,
I also believe that he was in Spain for I think it was Franco, the military dictator Franco took over,
right.
and he witnessed.
So that would have been.
He witnessed like the capitalists versus the communists, and then realized, geez, these guys have both reduced themselves to animals.
Yeah.
Yep. The capitalists have helped the communists.
Yeah.
In lots of ways.
Yes.
Certainly, they're certainly in cahoots today.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, when I say capitalism, I see major corporate capitalism. I'm not talking as much entrepreneurial.
Right. You're not talking
capitalism.
free markets. You're talking, it's really like fascism, right? A corporate government merger.
Fascism. But it's not the fascism that the left's always pointing at. It's the I mean, they need to be pointing their finger at themselves.
Right.
When they say fascist, and it's just not. They're just combined now. They've combined. They've teamed up. So it's kind of depressing.
Yeah, it is. It's wild. All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap this one up.
Can I just tell you about what I'm going to do? We're going to go out on this trip in later October.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to be out there in the wilderness. We're going to a place that they refer to as Monkey Island. It's not the name, but it's a place where they like to go and investigate. So I'll give you some details on that when I know more. Okay?
Yeah, we're having some rain issues here, Tim. Unfortunately, the metal roof doesn't react very well with audio equipment, so we had to mute ourselves there. But
it wasn't supposed to rain today.
Can you tell? Can you tell our listeners where they can find your work, Tomato Fields, where they can buy your book and perhaps other things that you're doing?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's just called Tomato Fields. If you type that in, it'll come right up, and it's available in paperback and electronic version. And I'm working on producing a student. Some of the students at the school in the sound design are going to produce an audiobook for me. So.
That's a nice resource.
Down the road a bit. It'd be good for the school too.
Sure.
So right now there's no audiobook, and I'm working on a sequel, and I'll have hopefully I'll get started on that pretty seriously in November, December. And you can find me. I'll send you all the contact information, but my email is crypticmysteries23@gmail.com.
Wonderful. So, listeners, there you go. You got Tim Moon's information. Go buy his book, Tomato Fields.
I also have on Instagram, and it's just tomato_fields, and that'll come right up for you. So I do a lot on Instagram.
All right, we'll put all those links in the description too.
We'll give you a follow as well if Teepee hasn't already done that.
Okay.
That's actually how Tim and I hooked up. Is I believe I followed you. And then you reached out and you're like, hey, you like books? It wasn't like that, but no, we got together through Instagram, and it was awesome. I'm really glad you reached out to me, man.
Well, I hope this was good. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, Tim, definitely. We can't thank you enough. This was one of the best shows that we've done, I think. So,
yeah, this is awesome.
You helped us out tremendously.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, you helped me out too. I appreciate it. And you guys have a great evening, okay?
Hey, thanks, Tim. You too. Be safe. Definitely update us on your Bigfoot hunting expedition.
Oh, yes.
That's really exciting, man. That's awesome. I can't wait to see where this goes.
I will let you know, okay?
All right. Thanks a lot, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Once again, apologize for the audio trouble. It's raining straight on a metal roof, and that's what we're dealing with.
It was just a pop-up shower. It's gone now.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to get the audio cleaned up. So, yeah, that's awesome. Tim Moon, Tomato Fields. Amazon, you can go find it. I'll put all that stuff, the links in the description. I'll put the link to that map for all of our Iowa listeners, if you want to go look and read those reports on Bigfoot in Iowa. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, on Iowa or whatever state you're listening
from.
They've
you can go look. Yeah, that website has every state.
And then I believe that the main page on that website on the left has like the primary states sort of listed.
Like the most.
That have more than a handful as opposed to like Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa don't.
You don't really hear about Bigfoot sightings in Iowa and
No, but it's still cool. We still have them. They happen. So, all right, folks. If you would be so kind to go give Tim a follow and then also to give us a follow.
A like, a share, a subscribe for Tim Moon as well.
Yeah. And a like, follow, subscribe, and share for us. Follow us on Instagram at Iowa Talk Guys _podcast.
At Iowa Talk Guys on X.
Marks the spot. Formerly known as Twitter.
The everything app.
Yeah. Elon's going to be making that a new pay. That's going to be the Chinese pay bank thing that they have in there. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But
something's going on. We're on the precipice of something big, folks.
We'll see what happens. So, all right. Hey, if you guys like this, you know what to do. Like we said, follow, like, subscribe, share. And always remember,
don't eat the yellow cake.
Don't eat the yellow snow.
And don't forget your camera when you see Bigfoot, because we're living in fucking 2023.
Well, they have their phones.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no,
Why haven't we seen more footage?
It's a great point, Erock. Great point.
I was meaning to
that's
ask
solid.
that, but,
that's a solid
1967, that one. Fucking.
Yeah, in Willow Creek, California. The most famous Bigfoot footage ever.
Now, everybody has a fucking cell phone, and they're always fucking on it, so.
Maybe they sense the radiation. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But maybe they can hear it or feel it.
Well, don't forget your camera.
Yep. Iowa Talk Guys. Out.
Hi. Good night, everybody.